Hi, thank you, Lawton, or Professor Cummings, and thank you to the law school here at George Washington University for having me here today. It's particularly nice to be here on the eve of Veterans Day. So any prior service or current service, here we go. Okay, thank you. I just want to get a sense of my audience today. I won't be talking a lot of military acronyms and legalese because I want you to get a sense of my story, and through that story, you'll also get a sense of the challenges I faced being a lawyer in a war zone. And finally, I'll end with the challenges that I faced in writing a book about it as a former government lawyer. Quickly, my background, again, I did an Army ROTC scholarship to pay for my tuition at Notre Dame, and after that, I said to the Army, they wanted me to come into active duty service. I said, I'll wait, just let me wait, and I'll go to law school on my own dime. And then after I went to law school, they said, hey, you still owe us 4 more years. They certainly didn't forget, and I came back in and I served as a U.S. Army JAG attorney. So it's an attorney for the Army, so I'm wearing a uniform, I hold a rank, and that's where I was. And my first assignment as an Army lawyer was to Fort Carson, Colorado, which is in Colorado Springs, south of Denver, and that was where I planned to spend 4 of my years, my 4 years of service, actually. The first 3 years were pretty uneventful. I cycled through several jobs there, and the final year, we went to war. So at that point, the job I held, what do JAGs do? Why does the Army need lawyers? And that's the primary question I'd always receive, especially when it came to deploying overseas. Why the heck do we need lawyers over there? We're fighting a war. And there are a lot of reasons why, but the primary reason that you have JAG attorneys in the Army is to prosecute misconduct when soldiers do bad things. And someone's there to handle that, advising the commanders on how to prosecute them, how to bring that to justice. Now, in a war zone, for me, I also wore a lot of other different hats. So back in Fort Carson, we worked in a legal building. My unit that I worked for, the infantry brigade of soldiers I worked for, was in a separate area. But in that building, that legal office, I'm kind of immune to what's going on outside. I do my little job, and I don't really worry about what they're doing, because they're training, they're doing military stuff. When you're told that you're going to war, all of a sudden, there's no better way to say you move in-house, because everyone lives together over there, and there is no separate legal office. You're one person out there by yourself, and you're the legal person in the midst of the infantry soldiers you work for. Now, for me, I was a prosecutor for an infantry brigade. And how many soldiers are in a brigade? A little over 3,000, upwards of 3,500 at times. So one lawyer, 3,500 soldiers. What's my job? Who's my client at that point? Is it the U.S. Army? Is it all these soldiers that I'm working for? Where's the privilege extend? That's always the question I have to keep asking myself when I'm over there. And that really comes down to what job you're performing that day. So the jobs range. The primary job over there is rules of engagement. And I think this has been in the news a lot, when and how you can defend yourself against the enemy. When you feel threatened, when can you fire off your weapon and actually kill somebody? So the legal expert is me. A woman out there, a bunch of guys, I have to tell them exactly what they're allowed to do. Rules of engagement, number 1. Number 2, I'm dealing still with the prosecuting misconduct. Number 3, claims. We trot over Iraqi land, we kill their animals, we destroy their property. They have a lawful right to come and file a claim and get reimbursed for that. So those are just 3 of the things I'm handling over there. Remember, over 3,000 soldiers, me, and 3 paralegals. Now, why did they not give me more help in going over there? And a lot of the reasons stem from it was the start of the war and we didn't really know what to expect. And so when I was deployed, they actually told me, you'll be there for 6 months, there won't be much to do, and then we'll cycle you back so you could get back to doing some real work. Little did I know what we would actually come to find out, that we would be there for a little over a year, and that the war would get very complicated in that time. So dealing with these 3 things, then comes detention operations, which has always been in the news. That's the JAG's call too. You're dealing with your commander my client is my commander at that point, my privilege extending to my commander. How exactly, sir, do you handle all these Iraqis we're arresting? Where do we put them? What does the Geneva Convention say? So you're on the ground trying to tell this guy, trying to convince him to listen to you, which isn't always easy, because the thing I talk about in my book is that as the lawyer in a group of a bunch of soldiers and trained warriors out there, how do you convince them to listen to you? How do you get them to trust my judgment? And the one thing I want to stress in any job that you encounter is that you need to know your client. My client was the United States Army. Now, in knowing the United States Army, I'm not going to be an infantryman myself, but certainly some basic training helps me, how to carry a weapon, what they're up against. But to know your client, you need to know it from the bottom up, what they deal with at the very lowest level, all the way up to the top. So that means getting outside, leaving your office, knowing how they operate, knowing who the key people are that are out there, not just your own little role sitting in your office going, I'm the legal person, tell me when you want me to do something. It doesn't work like that, because I think when it comes to being a, quote, advisor or someone in-house, you need to take a proactive approach to your job. And that means knowing your client, knowing everything they do, and then knowing the law that goes with it, and trying to marry those together so they trust your judgment. So for me, understanding what my client did meant going out to each of the lower level units, getting to know the chain of command out there, and at the same time, getting to know how the soldiers felt at the lower, what are they doing? When you say you go out each night, you say you go to a house of Iraqis, exactly how do you enter that house? And how do you determine who you're gonna bring back that day or that night? And what do you do once you handcuff him? Do you have any regulations in place that we can standardize to make this easier for you? Because in the Army, they see a JAG attorney coming, and it's like the equivalent of seeing the police coming through. They don't want to talk to you. No, JAG means bad news, because you're the prosecutor, and you bring the bad news. Someone's done something wrong. But that's the something that you need to change as the lawyer. And that goes for companies as well. When the lawyers come up, it's, the lawyers are here, geez. Something's going on, everyone shut their books, don't tell them what you're doing. That's the thing that you're aiming to turn over. You need to get on the inside to get them to trust you and ask for your advice before they do something wrong. And how do you do that is the question I always had to contend with over there. And let me give you an example of what the first thing I had to contend with. We land in Iraq. It's me and all these soldiers. And the first thing my client wants to do is go out and find those bad guys because it's all over the news. There are all these insurgents out there. They're trying to kill us. We lose some men along the way. So I'm feeling for my client. I want to help my client. We're going to go out. They have missions that night. What am I thinking of? I'm looking for the legal landmines at this point. What does my client, the commander, the United States Army, need to watch out for in conducting their job? Well, the first thing that came to mind for me was, if we go out and arrest a bunch of Iraqis, where are we going to put them? Like, where do we hold them once we get them? Do we have anyone that can speak the language? And you would think these things would be common sense, but they certainly weren't at the time. And you could read about the details of dealing with that in my book, but bottom line was we needed to find some place, because I'm the lawyer, I know my job, I know the law, to house these detainees. Where do we put them? So how do I convince my commander to make this important? Because he's focused on just going out and getting them, shooting them up if they need to be shot up. I'm like, sir, hey, I'm going to make it easier for you. I'm going to say, me and my guys, my team of paralegals, are going to build a shelter out of some tents. The first time, try to make it easy for your client. Try to show them that you're trying to help them do their job correctly, because you're always keeping your mind on protecting your client, making sure that they do the right thing. Luckily for me, I had smart commanders, and they said, okay, go ahead and set up those tents, JAG, and we'll follow along with what you've said. No, they didn't help. No, all the soldiers around didn't help, but The first time it's okay, because the next time they did. So you need to set the example at some point without being sort of, the buzzkill, essentially.